It's a dry September morning, and the sun rises orange through a thick mass of wildfire smoke. The smell of it is the first thing I notice as I step outside into my mom's urban Missoula, Montana garden. It's so dense that Mount Sentinel, just 3 miles away, is a vague blue silhouette through the haze. But in the tangle of wild sunflowers and Rocky Mountain bee plant at the corner of my mom's yard, the American goldfinches and pine siskins are feeding on sunflower seeds. Against the backdrop of forest fires and an increasingly hostile climate, there are still things we can do to provide habitat for our fellow living creatures. Welcome to Wild with Nature. I'm Shane Sater. This story, which I wrote in September of 2024, is called Waiting for Rain, Making It Through Climate Change. If you'd like to read the written version of this story, illustrated with my photos from the field as you listen, you can find it on my website, wildwithnature.com. And now, let's continue with the story. A car rushes past. Most of the goldfinches and siskins erupt into the air and seek shelter among the high branches of the neighborhood's Siberian elms. A free-roaming domestic cat slinks past, a well-fed pet with killer instincts, stalking songbirds for sport. The deer fence that surrounds most of my mom's yard discourages the cats from entering. But the sunflowers are outside of the fence. And not everyone in the neighborhood realizes that free-ranging cats are the #1 human-related cause of direct bird deaths, killing over 1.3 billion birds a year, a number that's just astounding in the United States alone. And so cats continue to roam the streets, and the sunflowers, although clearly of interest to the neighborhood's songbirds, are not entirely safe. The smoke is worse the next day, and the next. A thin film of ashes from the nearest wildfire, the Sherritt Creek fire 24 miles south of us, covers my car. I sip tea made from peppermint that I harvested from the garden in an attempt to soothe my dry throat, irritated and rough with smoke. I see a news article about wildfires in Bolivia where in-person classes have been canceled in the schools in 6 of the country's 9 departments because the air is choked by smoke. Checking active fires and concentrations of fine particulate in the atmosphere, I'm dismayed to see that the current situation in South America is far worse than the already bad conditions here in the western United States. From the Brazilian Amazon to Bolivia and Paraguay, a massive swath of South America is dotted with wildfires and oppressed by smoke. When I share the maps with my friend Margaret, she sums it up. We're fucking doomed. Meanwhile, the siskins and goldfinches continue feeding, day after day, in the cat-plagued sunflowers. A lesser goldfinch shows up, smaller than the siskins, and calls plaintively. A Wilson's warbler flits through the skunkbush sumac and the chokecherry, hunting insects and calling sharply. Finally, the rains arrive, carried by a fall cold front. I wake up to steady raindrops that drum playfully on the steel roof of the shed. The grape arbor over the door of the house sings the music of the rain. Amazingly, a hen mallard has appeared at the puddle along the edge of the street, quacking occasionally. On the pavement of the street, the puddles run quickly into the storm drain. The rain we've been praying for flows toward the Clark Fork River, anointed with a sheen of motor oil. In downtown Helena, the rains cause flooding on Last Chance Gulch. For an afternoon, the street becomes an asphalt river. And then the precious rain slips away, rain in search of plants and wetlands to hold it. There are no puddles in my mom's garden, no runoff. The green of the plants seems more vibrant now. Grape leaves and wild sunflower leaves, goldenrod leaves and Rocky Mountain bee plant leaves, Siberian elm leaves and last year's dead leaves patter and drip with raindrops. The wood chips underneath, which help hold water during the droughts, soak it up now. In the soil, I imagine the roots and the mycelium rejoicing. Drought and wildfire, heat waves, unusual warm spells followed by bitter Arctic cold as the jet stream gets weaker. Climate change is stressing life, in this garden and on this earth. A fungal infection brought on by last winter's sudden temperature change killed an apricot tree in my mom's yard this year. By now, we've learned to expect wildfire smoke every summer in Montana. This year, we've had 2 months of it. As a kid 20 years ago in neighboring Idaho, I don't remember a single summer like this. The siskins have returned to the sunflowers. I sip another cup of mint tea from the garden. In this time of great stress, the birds and the other creatures need our help more than ever. And it starts here, around our homes and in our communities. Leah Rampey, author of Earth and Soul, Reconnecting Amid Climate Chaos, writes, "Before we offer our support to this earth, we must dedicate ourselves to increased awareness of the lives around us. But more than that, we must learn from them. Our challenge is to embrace a new yet ancient rhythm of deep listening as a prerequisite for creative collaboration with all life. This collaboration with the animals and plants around us and with each other can help us make it through. I think of how my friend Catherine Ron, herbalist and co-founder of the Missoula-based company Wild Wanders, taught me about the Siberian elms. These trees, common in my mom's neighborhood and regarded by many as weeds, give us a mucilaginous inner bark in the spring. Like the mint from the garden, it's a soothing medicine for our smoke-roughened throats. I remember how my mom and I gathered some of the inner bark in May of 2023, when smoke from wildfires in Canada was blanketing Montana. Today, in a lull in the rain, I decide to check on the young elm growing at the edge of the yard near the alley, where we pruned a branch that spring to harvest the inner bark. The elm seems to be thriving in spite of adversity, spindly branches reaching taller than my head, leaves beaded with rain. In the sunflowers at the edge of the yard, the goldfinches and pine siskins continue feeding. As I listen to them, I think about all of the plants we can encourage. Plants that may help them and us make it through climate change. Thanks for listening. This story, and the whole project of Wild with Nature, is possible thanks to the support of listeners like you. This support includes those of you who share this podcast with your family, friends, and neighbors, my collaborators and fellow naturalists who appear in many of these stories, and also those generous folks who give me the financial support that I need in order to continue. Thank you. Once again, you can find the written, illustrated version of this story on my website, wildwithnature.com. There, you can also make a monthly donation through Patreon or a one-time contribution in support of my work. It's a huge help, both because it takes me a lot of time and energy to produce these stories, and also just to know that you value this work. Thank you. Until next time, get outside. And while you're out there, whether the air is smoky or clear, whether we're in a heat wave or a drought, or whether we're getting rain, think about the creatures around us and how our relationships with them may help us be resilient in the face of climate change.